The disappearance of Suzanne Morphew shook the small community of Chaffee County, Colorado, in an unexpected and devastating way. A sunny Mother's Day morning in 2020 turned into a nightmare when Suzanne, an apparently ordinary woman, simply vanished. It was the kind of news no one anticipated in such a peaceful place. The tragedy touched everyone's hearts, sparking a mix of shock, fear, and suspicion that would linger for a long time. For those who knew Suzanne, the idea that she could have left her family without explanation was simply unthinkable. Suzanne was the kind of person who seemed to light up any room. Raised in Alexandria, Indiana, she grew up in a loving family and developed a strong bond with nature, something she continued to cherish in her adult life. Married to Barry Morphew and mother to 2 daughters, she was described as a generous woman with a big heart and a contagious smile. Despite battling cancer in the past, her determination to live was inspiring. This story of resilience only made her absence more mysterious. Who could have imagined that someone with such inner strength would fall victim to such an uncertain fate? When Suzanne disappeared, the community quickly came together in search of answers. Volunteer teams combed through forests, rivers, and trails, while the police followed every lead, no matter how small. There was something profoundly unsettling about the way it all happened, as if every detail was a piece of a puzzle that just didn't fit. Social media was flooded with theories, and the case gained national attention, casting a shadow of uncertainty over the town. Yet, at its core, the biggest question remained: how could something like this happen in such a quiet place? Perhaps this was only the beginning of a much darker story. Mother's Day 2020 began like any other for Suzanne Morphew. That morning, she decided to enjoy the mild weather and go for a bike ride, something she loved to do. It was an almost meditative ritual for her, a way to connect with nature and find peace amidst the routines of daily life. However, that ride would be the last known trace of Suzanne. Her phone fell silent, and the usual calm of the area gave way to growing concern. Tragedy seemed to be approaching, but subtly, like a shadow on the horizon. The timeline of her disappearance was pieced together slowly, step by step, based on testimonies and evidence. Suzanne was last seen around 8 a.m., leaving her house with her bike. Hours later, Barry Morphew, who was approximately 150 kilometers away on an emergency job, attempted to contact her without success. This raised the first suspicions. By 5 p.m., a concerned neighbor, alarmed by the silence, contacted the authorities. What began as a routine search quickly escalated, with helicopters, search dogs, and rescue teams scouring the area. The first indication that something was terribly wrong came with the discovery of Suzanne's bike, abandoned on a nearby trail. The scene was strange and unsettling. The bike appeared to have been left abruptly, with no obvious signs of an accident or struggle. To investigators, it was a silent scream that Suzanne had not disappeared of her own will. The case, which had already perplexed the community, took on a new dimension. Questions without answers emerged, such as who could have been responsible, and more chillingly, where was Suzanne? This was only the beginning of a mystery that would shake everyone to their core. As soon as Suzanne was officially declared missing, the response from authorities and the community was immediate. Chaffee County, a small and close-knit town, saw its residents mobilize within hours. It was as if everyone felt that the heart of their community was being tested. The local police, with assistance from state agencies, launched a search operation that quickly expanded. Meanwhile, friends and neighbors joined involuntarily, determined to find Suzanne. For many, the idea that someone so beloved had disappeared felt like a betrayal of the shared sense of security. The search involved an impressive task force. Rescue teams combed the areas surrounding Salida, from dense forests to steep slopes and isolated trails. Drones flew over the region, providing detailed aerial images, while search dogs traversed the trails Suzanne frequented. Each new effort reignited hope of finding her, but as days passed, the lack of concrete clues began to weigh heavily on everyone's spirits. The community's dedication was moving. People prepared meals for volunteers, distributed flyers, and used social media to spread the word about her disappearance. Yet, the tragedy always seemed to stay one step ahead. Barry Morphew, Suzanne's husband, also made a public plea for help, offering a $100,000 reward for any information leading to her whereabouts. In a widely shared video, he stated with tearful eyes, "Suzanne, if you can hear me, I want you to know we are searching for you and that I love you." His words seemed sincere, but for some, there was something that didn't quite fit. Rumors began circulating. Could Barry know more than he was saying? The tension grew, and although the search continued, the feeling that something dark lay behind Suzanne's disappearance became impossible to ignore. Barry Morphew, Suzanne's husband, was immediately thrust into the spotlight following her disappearance. Originally from Indiana, Barry was known as a successful landscaping businessman and a former college baseball player. To those who knew him, he appeared to be a hard-working man, devoted to his family and an active outdoor lifestyle. However, as the investigation progressed, public perception began to shift. The tragedy surrounding Suzanne gave way to suspicious glances toward Barry, turning him from a worried husband into a potential suspect in the eyes of many. In the aftermath of Suzanne's disappearance, Barry made public statements that, at first glance, seemed emotional and genuine. However, certain parts of his comments left both the community and investigators puzzled. He repeatedly emphasized that Suzanne could have been the victim of a wild animal attack or an unfortunate accident, suggesting specific scenarios that raised eyebrows. In one interview, when asked what he thought might have happened, he deflected, saying, "I just want my wife back." While this seemed like a reasonable response, the lack of personal details or mention of intimate moments with Suzanne made his words feel calculated. Over time, Barry's actions and behavior began to raise further questions. He sold the family home just months after Suzanne's disappearance, a move many deemed hasty. Additionally, reports from neighbors and acquaintances mentioned that he seemed emotionally detached during search efforts and avoided participating in community-organized events. The police also revealed that Barry had refused to take a polygraph test. These actions cast a cloud of doubt over Barry, leading many to wonder, was he hiding something? Meanwhile, the case continued to take even darker and more mysterious turns. As the investigation progressed, unsettling details about Suzanne and Barry's marriage began to emerge. Despite the appearance of a happy couple, accounts from friends and family suggested that their relationship had deteriorated over the years. After surviving cancer, Suzanne seemed to be seeking a new sense of purpose in life, while Barry remained focused on his business and family routines. This disconnect began to create visible tensions, and what was once considered a stable household started to come into question. For many, the tragedy appeared to have roots in problems that had been quietly building over time. One of the most impactful revelations came from text messages found on Suzanne's phone. Exchanges with close friends revealed that she felt emotionally distant from Barry and mentioned that their relationship was falling apart. Additionally, records indicated that Suzanne had begun communicating with an old schoolmate, suggesting a possible romantic interest outside her marriage. These findings added a new layer to the case, raising the possibility that infidelity or Suzanne's desire for a new life might have played a crucial role in the events that followed. With this information, speculation about a marital motive gained traction. Investigators and the media began to question whether Barry might have reacted to discovering infidelity or to Suzanne's desire to end the marriage. For some, Barry's behavior after her disappearance, such as avoiding the polygraph test and selling the family home, seemed to point to something deeper than grief. The idea that personal conflicts often underpin tragedies cast an even darker shadow over the case. Yet questions remained: to what extent could marital problems have contributed to Suzanne's fate? And what else might be hidden behind the scenes of this complex story? In the first months following Suzanne Morphew's disappearance, the police investigation became a race against time. Detectives from Chaffee County, supported by the FBI and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation (CBI), worked tirelessly to piece together a puzzle that seemed increasingly complex. The operation included numerous interviews, exhaustive searches, and the tracking of technological data, yet the lack of clear leads frustrated investigators. Despite the intense efforts, the tragedy remained shrouded in mystery. With every step forward, more questions arose than answers. The initial evidence collected began to outline what might have happened. Cell phone data revealed suspicious patterns of communication and movement from both Suzanne and Barry on the day she disappeared. GPS data from Barry's truck indicated unusual activity on the morning of May 10, including frequent stops at locations that raised investigators' eyebrows. Additionally, security camera footage from the area captured snippets suggesting odd behavior. However, none of this information provided a definitive conclusion, leaving the case mired in constant speculation. The absence of Suzanne's body was one of the greatest challenges in the investigation. Without a clear crime scene, detectives struggled to build a solid case. The disappearance became a test of patience and resilience for both law enforcement and the community. Prosecutors were hesitant to proceed with formal charges without conclusive evidence, despite mounting public pressure. Still, suspicions surrounding Barry continued to grow, and the emerging dark details suggested that the mystery was far from being solved. The most haunting question lingered: could it be possible that the truth would never come to light? In May 2021, just over a year after Suzanne Morphew's disappearance, the investigation took a dramatic turn. Barry Morphew was arrested and formally charged with first-degree murder, tampering with physical evidence, and other crimes related to the case. The news shocked the Chaffee County community, where many still struggled to accept the idea that Suzanne's husband could be involved in her disappearance. For others, the arrest felt like an inevitable conclusion after months of mounting suspicion. However, the tragedy was far from resolved, and the case began to draw even greater national attention. The formal charges presented by the prosecution were damning. According to court documents, Barry allegedly committed the crime in a fit of impulsive violence, driven by marital problems. Although the absence of Suzanne's body made the case exceptionally challenging, prosecutors relied on circumstantial and digital evidence, including cell phone data, GPS records, and security footage. One specific detail stood out. The location of Barry's phone on the night before Suzanne's disappearance showed unusual activity around the house, suggesting a potential attempt to conceal evidence. For investigators, these clues were sufficient to move forward with charges, even without a body. Barry's arrest divided opinions within the community and the media. While some believed that justice was finally being served, others questioned whether the evidence presented was strong enough to secure a conviction. Sensational headlines highlighted the twist in the case, fueling heated debates on social media. Residents of Chaffee County, once united in the search for Suzanne, now found themselves on opposing sides, arguing over guilt and innocence. The situation laid bare the emotional scars left by the tragedy, as everyone anxiously awaited the case's development in court. A sense that more revelations were on the horizon lingered in the air, leaving everyone uneasy. The case against Barry Morphew quickly became one of the most complex and polarizing in Colorado's recent history. Despite his arrest and formal charges, the lack of conclusive evidence loomed over the prosecution's efforts. There were no eyewitnesses, confessions, or irrefutable physical evidence directly linking Barry to Suzanne's alleged homicide. The prosecution relied on circumstantial and digital evidence, which, while intriguing, left troubling gaps. Without Suzanne's body, many critical questions remained unanswered, complicating the narrative presented in court. The prosecution's strategy revolved around suspicious behavioral patterns and anomalies in the technological data collected. Barry's truck GPS data, text messages between the couple, and accounts from friends regarding marital tensions were key pieces of the puzzle. However, these pieces faced heavy scrutiny from defense attorneys and legal analysts, who argued that none of them constituted a smoking gun. Additionally, alleged evidence of scene tampering raised doubts, with critics pointing out investigative flaws. For many, the tragedy seemed tainted by a rush to find someone to blame. The absence of a body was undeniably the prosecution's greatest hurdle. In the United States, homicide trials without the recovery of the victim's body are rare and notoriously difficult to sustain in court. Defense attorneys exploited this weakness to the fullest, arguing that the lack of concrete evidence left room for numerous alternative interpretations. This raised broader concerns about whether the judicial system was equipped to handle a case so heavily reliant on speculation. Meanwhile, the uncertainty further eroded the heart of Chaffee County's community, which remained torn between seeking justice and grappling with a mystery that offered no definitive answers. The trial against Barry Morphew began with high expectations and national attention. The courtroom, packed with journalists and residents of Chaffee County, became the stage where Barry's fate would be decided. From the outset, it was clear that the trial would be a fierce battle between the prosecution and the defense. The prosecutors, confident in their circumstantial evidence and the narrative of a troubled marriage, sought to convince the jury that Barry had acted out of jealousy or rage. Meanwhile, the defense, led by seasoned attorneys, meticulously dismantled each argument, highlighting the gaps and inconsistencies in the prosecution's case. The defense's strategy was clear: to instill reasonable doubt. They emphasized the lack of direct physical evidence and argued that law enforcement had prematurely fixated on Barry, overlooking other possibilities. One of their strongest points was the absence of Suzanne, which left the case without a fundamental element: proof of a crime. The defense also scrutinized potential flaws in the evidence collection process, questioning the reliability of data such as GPS records and security camera analyses. For many, this approach added a new layer of complexity, turning the trial into a psychological and legal showdown. Then, in a stunning twist, the prosecution dropped all charges against Barry in April 2022, before the trial could proceed. The decision, both unexpected and controversial, was justified by the lack of crucial evidence, including Suzanne's body, and the possibility of new information emerging. Prosecutors claimed they needed more time to build a solid case, but for many, the withdrawal of charges felt like an admission that the case should never have gone to trial. The community was left in shock as Barry publicly declared his innocence, reaffirming his love for Suzanne and his ongoing efforts to find her. Yet the lingering question remained: if Barry wasn't guilty, then who could be? In September 2023, an unexpected development reignited the case of Suzanne Morphew. Her remains were discovered in a remote area of Saguache County, approximately 72 kilometers from where she had disappeared in 2020. The discovery, made by chance during an unrelated search, brought a mix of relief and heartbreak to her family and community. While Suzanne's location had finally been uncovered, the tragedy continued to reverberate, raising new questions and reopening wounds that had never fully healed. The location where Suzanne was found was desolate and difficult to access, surrounded by mountains and dense vegetation. The conditions suggested that her body had been deliberately concealed, making it nearly impossible to find earlier. Investigators described the area as one of extreme isolation, far from known trails or signs of human activity. This detail added a new layer of complexity to the case, pointing to the possibility that whoever was responsible for her death was familiar with the terrain or had a meticulous plan to avoid detection. The discovery of Suzanne's remains was a turning point in the case. For her family, it offered closure after years of uncertainty about her whereabouts, though the grief over what had happened remained overwhelming. For investigators, the find renewed hope of finally building a stronger case. Forensic evidence, such as the analysis of the site and her remains, could provide critical clues about what truly occurred. Yet the most haunting question lingered: would the truth behind Suzanne's tragedy finally be uncovered, or would this discovery only deepen the mystery? The discovery of Suzanne Morphew's remains in September 2023 sparked a wave of emotions among her family, friends, and the Chaffee County community. For those who loved her, it was a moment of both relief and profound sorrow. Suzanne's daughters, Mallory and Macy, publicly expressed their grief, thanking those who had continued to seek answers and requesting privacy as they faced the tragedy. Close friends described a mix of heartbreak over her definitive loss and hope that justice might finally be served. For the small community, the case that had united them in the search for Suzanne now demanded new reflections on safety and trust. Media coverage intensified as soon as the discovery was announced. Newspapers and television networks nationwide revisited the case, recounting the events since Suzanne's disappearance in 2020. Sensational headlines questioned how her remains had remained hidden for so long, while investigative programs dedicated entire episodes to reconstructing the facts. Social media also erupted with debates, dividing opinions about Barry Morphew's guilt or innocence. Suzanne's tragedy once again became the focal point of national discussions, solidifying its place as one of the most emblematic cases of disappearance and investigation in the United States. The discovery reignited interest in the case in a remarkable way. Investigators pledged to review the evidence from a fresh perspective, including a thorough examination of the site where Suzanne was found. Justice for Suzanne support groups grew on social media, while crime experts analyzed every new detail. For many, this new chapter seemed to offer the promise of answers but also served as a somber reminder of how much remained unresolved. The sense that the truth was closer left the community and media in a state of tense anticipation, a silence filled with questions awaiting the next development. With the discovery of Suzanne Morphew's remains, authorities have renewed their commitment to unraveling the mystery that has challenged the Chaffee County community and the judicial system for years. Investigators hope that evidence recovered from the site will provide crucial answers. The analysis of the remains, including possible signs of trauma and DNA testing, could reveal details about the cause of death, the exact timing of the event, and even clues about who was responsible. Additionally, studying the surrounding environment, such as the presence of objects or fibers, might indicate whether Suzanne was left there shortly after her disappearance or moved later. The discovery has also reignited debates about the potential for new charges. Barry Morphew's name inevitably returned to the spotlight, despite the charges against him being dropped in 2022. If new evidence points to his involvement or implicates someone else, authorities could reopen the case and file new charges. On the other hand, there is also the possibility that forensic evidence might reveal a completely new suspect, shifting the narrative and bringing an unexpected twist. For prosecutors, this discovery represents an opportunity to correct past missteps and finally build a strong case. Forensic analysis will be the central pillar of progress in the investigation. Experts have already begun meticulously examining the remains and the site where Suzanne was found, utilizing cutting-edge technology to ensure no clue is overlooked. Investigators also plan to cross-reference these new findings with previously collected data, such as GPS records, text messages, and witness statements, to create a clearer picture of what happened. Suzanne's family, the community, and the media are anxiously awaiting the next steps, hoping that the case might finally reach a conclusion, bringing justice to a tragedy that has weighed heavily on their hearts for so long. In April 2024, the case of Suzanne Morphew entered a new chapter with the release of her autopsy results. The report confirmed that Suzanne was the victim of homicide, although the exact cause of death remains undetermined. A disturbing detail emerged. Traces of a cocktail of drugs commonly used to tranquilize wild animals were found in her bones. However, no clear signs of physical trauma were identified. This revelation sparked new speculation about the circumstances of her death and raised questions about the potential involvement of individuals familiar with such substances. The confirmation of homicide, albeit without definitive details about the method, reignited debates about the effectiveness of the initial investigation and how authorities had handled the case. The community of Chaffee County, already shaken by previous events, found itself back in the national spotlight. The discovery of tranquilizing substances in Suzanne's remains added a layer of complexity to the case, suggesting a level of premeditation and specialized knowledge on the part of the perpetrator. This new information increased pressure on authorities to identify and hold the guilty party accountable. In response to these revelations, authorities reaffirmed their commitment to seeking justice for Suzanne Morphew. Detailed forensic analysis of the new evidence became a top priority, with hopes that additional clues might emerge. Suzanne's family, particularly her daughters, continues to endure an emotional roller coaster, balancing the relief of finding answers with the pain of new, unresolved questions. The community remains vigilant, united in their hope that the full truth will finally come to light and that justice will ultimately be served. In September 2024, a U.S. federal judge dismissed Barry Morphew's lawsuit against Colorado authorities, in which he sought $15 million for wrongful arrest and prosecution related to the disappearance of his wife, Suzanne Morphew. Barry alleged that investigators fabricated evidence and conducted a negligent investigation, leading to his arrest in May 2021, long before Suzanne's body was found. Charges against him were dropped in April 2022 after it was revealed that exculpatory evidence had been withheld. Judge Daniel D. Domenico acknowledged that significant errors had occurred but ruled that authorities had probable cause for Barry's arrest at the time. He also raised questions about the qualified immunity doctrine, which shields prosecutors from civil suits, suggesting it might need re-evaluation to allow individuals harmed by wrongful prosecutions to seek restitution. Barry's defense argues that the evidence points to Suzanne being kidnapped, drugged, and murdered by someone else, particularly after tranquilizers were discovered in her remains. Despite his legal exoneration, Barry remains under suspicion, and authorities continue their commitment to seeking justice for Suzanne. Welcome to Spooky Stories, the channel where thrilling and mysterious tales come to life. Here you'll hear stories based on real events with names and details changed to protect identities and, of course, to avoid any legal issues. So, get ready to dive into intriguing cases full of twists and turns that will keep you hooked until the very end. If you enjoy chilling and surprising stories, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. And don't forget to leave a like. It helps us bring even more amazing tales to you. At the end of this video we've got a suggestion for another thrilling case waiting just for you. Stick around and uncover the secrets behind these dark stories with us.